I'm being selective in the questions that we thought about. Can we go to a Welsh-specific one? And the gender quota.
Yeah.
I think the audience might like to hear your views.
Right. I fear the audience are going to be much more knowledgeable about this than any of us. The gender quota bill, which isn't actually called that, but because I haven't got it written down, you haven't got it written down either. It seems to be a bit, have put the Welsh Government in a bit of a pickle, but they don't seem to be perhaps noticing the pickle.
Nicely said.
I mean, as I understand it, and I'm sure people in the audience will correct me if I'm wrong, it is a bill which will require political parties, all part of the reform programme, and I'm not going to talk about closed lists because I don't understand what they are, but they will require lists of candidates to be at least 50% women, but uses the word gender, both in the bill, I think, and in the explanatory note, rather than sex, without giving any clarity about what that means, and also makes it, because at the moment the Equality Act allows political parties to employ discriminatory selection processes, but only in order to redress inequality or underrepresentation of women. But it doesn't mandate them to do it, it only allows them to do it. What this bill will do is to mandate political parties to redress underrepresentation, and in addition to that will do it by applying some definition of gender which is wholly unclear and seems to be really basically self-ID, because it's asking the candidates to make a declaration about whether they're a woman or a man, or not a woman, sorry, in which, and there's no penalty for lying. It's exempt from the penalties for lying in relation to other parts of the process. So it's really problematic in a number of respects, and the most recent thing that I saw was a report, very lengthy and detailed report from the Reform Bill Committee, stating that essentially, well, I can't remember what the detailed recommendations were, but they include that the thing should be put on hold while the question of whether or not the government is even competent to pass this legislation is dealt with. Which, because it effectively overrides the Equality Act, and that's not it just shades of Section 35 and the Scottish situation, the Scottish gender reassignment. What's it called, the bill?
Gender Reform
Scotland Bill. That's the one. Come back. I mean, it just seems like a full replay of that situation. It seems to me pretty clear from what I've read that the government doesn't have the power to change Section 104 of the Equality Act in the way that it's purporting to do. It's also really problematic in the sense that it seems to be bringing in a sort of form of self-ID in relation to this small area. But again, I think it was Maya who was saying earlier, or it may have been Helen, that there are all the litigation and challenges that we're dealing with are all about these sort of issues of this particular, quota or that list or whatever. Nobody's grasping the nettle of dealing with the thing overall. And this looks like it'll be yet another exercise in that. And I don't think that the Welsh Government is showing much sign of seeing the thing globally. I've looked at the LGBTQ plus action plan. Doesn't seem to indicate very much intention of taking a more moderate tone or more moderate approach to these matters more generally. I just don't understand what the government thinks is going to happen.
Can I say something about it, which is that when I started to think about the Scottish example, which is also a quota, but it's quotas on public boards. Originally, they wanted to have 50% quotas women on public boards, and women will be self-ID. Forum in Scotland took a challenge against that and won. And then they changed it to women, meaning the definition as altered by a GRC. And I remember thinking at the time, well, oh, come on, you know, there's hardly any GRCs. And I mean, 50% is kind of a notional figure anyway. What does it matter if it's 49, 51? And I've probably said this in meetings, like, as we go to a bunch of meetings and talk to people, and I said it over and over again. And then one day I thought, like, oh, think of Mriddle Wadwa. So what this bill does, what the Scottish version that has been stayed by the Section 35 order does, and what the gender quotas bill here would do, is not say, we're trying to get 50-50 women, but you know what, it might be 49% real women and 51% real men. What it does is it gets some men to count as women. And one man who counts as a woman, who can sit there and say, I, as a woman, say we should have gender-neutral toilets, and we should have a parental leave policy instead of a maternity leave policy, etc., etc. That man can turn the organisation upside down in the way that a man who admits he's a man can't. So I now see it actually as really serious, like really serious, at least as serious as, you know, can policemen search cross-sex people, because like, look what Mriddle Wadwa has done to the entire Scottish rape crisis, the whole of it, not just Edinburgh rape crisis, one man. So,
although that wasn't the act that was stopped by Section 35.
no, I know it wasn't. I just mean you only need one.
Yeah.
It's not like there's one man running a rape crisis centre. There are men who run women's centres in around the country occasionally, sometimes for reasons because you know, it used to be a women's centre and then it became one, and there are rules for, you know, he doesn't go into some bits of it or whatever. This is a man who says he's a woman. That's a completely different thing. So it'll be another example of this general law that what was brought in to help us will be used against us. That man will spend his time destroying women's rights.